Okay, so I'll be examining which point of view I agree with the White and Lynch controversy. And so before I watched Wild at Heart, I kind of thought it was just gonna be more of like a typical movie style of like today, like kind of like lighthearted and like not that intense, just because I've heard of Nicolas Cage and Laura Dern before, so I thought it would be kind of like a cookie cutter movie that wasn't very controversial and didn't have a lot of interesting scenes as it ended up having. And so it was filmed in 1990, and it was a black comedy romantic crime film. And just from the opening scene when Lula's mom had the black man go up to Sailor and try to kill him, and then Sailor has to turn on him to defend himself, was really intense way to start the movie. And the reason this scene was actually pretty controversial was because it we didn't know who the black man was, and he was just sort of a filler in the role, and once he was dead, like, it wasn't talked about again. But if it was a white man, it probably would have ended up differently. And so it was directed by David Lynch, and it was based on Barry Gifford's 1989 novel, but Lynch changed the ending to fit the way that he liked it. And so it revolved around Sailor and Lula, and after Sailor killed the man, he had to spend time in jail, and Lula was still sort of loyal to him throughout this time, like she was waiting for him to get out, but her mother did not like Sailor and kind of despised him, and it really took me aback in the beginning of the movie when she tried to come on to him in the bathroom, and it was just weird how Sailor basically was part of killing Lula's father because her mom hired what was his name? Santos. Yeah, she hired Santos, and Sailor was part of that. And Lula's father was killed, even though when she was a child she was raped. And she was only 20 at the time, which was also a lot because I'm only 19, and that would be me in a year, and I just can't imagine living that life, to how sort of crazy and out of touch with reality they were, honestly. And so the movie just like followed them. Obviously Sailor broke his parole, and they were headed for California, and they sort of had this like I don't know, they were just like, they thought they were like sort of untouchable, and there was constantly action, and it was a very sexual movie, which was at times like uncomfortable, just because I don't normally watch movies like that. So it was interesting style of Lynch's. And throughout the movie there were allusions to the Wizard of Oz, which I didn't really pick up on until the very end, like when Lula was in the hotel room and she was clicking her red heels, similar to, I forget the main character in Wizard of Oz, but just like hoping. And then Glinda the Good Witch at the end when he came to his realization. And so I saw that it was a moderate success in the box office, and that made sense once I get to White's review of the movie, why Americans sort of escaped when they watched the movie. And so Lula's mom first hired the Johnny Farragut character to bring Lula home, and then she called Santos to kill Sailor because she just wanted him out of the picture because he kind of knew everything, and just she thought was a danger to her and Lula. And so she kind of was in like a love triangle with them too. She was just telling both of them that they were the only one, like they didn't have to worry about each other. But then Santos eventually kills Johnny when they're at the one hotel. And it was really a weird scene too when Johnny did get killed, because I still don't really like understand the point of the team where the killers, when it was like execution style in a way. It just was a very intense scene, like a lot was happening, and then all of a sudden Johnny was dead, and then it becomes Santos' responsibility. And then Sailor kind of is on to the idea that there's a hit out on him, and then so he goes to find the one girl to ask if there is one, and she of course lies to him, and it ends up being the one guy who was a porn star or director of porn at the like motel they were staying at, and he presents the idea of robbing a bank to him, because Sailor and Lula are on their way to try to start a new life, and this would be good money for them, and Sailor's already done stuff like this in the past. And so when they go to rob the bank, I mean, I kind of saw this coming, like it was just too good to be true that like something was gonna go wrong. And so he ends up shooting the two guys behind the desk, and Sailor was like, this was not part of the deal, and he tries to turn on him, but he was given a fake weapon, like there was no ammo in it or anything, and so he's like, well, he's screwed. And so the guy ends up being shot by the police when he tries to escape, and he ends up shooting his own head off with his own gun. And obviously Sailor didn't get away, he just surrendered to the police. And this was right after he knew that Lula was pregnant, and that's why she was acting so weird. And so he spends 6 years in jail for that crime, or 6 or 7. And then when, like, I wasn't sure if they were gonna end up being together, but once he was released, it sort of brought me back to the beginning when Lula picked him up originally. It's kind of the same, but now this time they had a child. And when they were driving home, Sailor just kind of came to this realization that he was never going to be good enough to be a father to their child and like a good husband to Lula. So he's just like, he leaves, and like this breaks Lula, and the son's kind of confused because he hasn't had a father figure around for the past 7 years. And so then Sailor leaves them, and a gang approaches him, and then he throws a slur at them, and they attack him. And when he was being beaten down, he sort of had this realization that, like, he saw Glinda the Good Witch, and he realized that he wanted to be with Lula, and he wanted to be a father. And so he runs back to them. He does like the grand entrance running on top of the cars, and like tells Lula he wants to be with her. And I think just seeing those two interact made their child realize that, oh, this is his father and he does love them. And it just kind of came full circle. And especially when Lula's mom, like, she was obviously an alcoholic, and she told Lula not to even bother with Sailor, but Lula was head over heels for him, so she still did. She still went and picked him up, and it kind of was assumed that they just like lived happy ever after. And yeah, so the movie was definitely interesting, but when I read White's review on it, it sort of brought up things I wasn't initially aware of, where I just kind of was confused why it was even in the film to begin with, and why people would want to watch it, honestly. And White kind of brought up the like political state the country was in at the time, and like the whole vibe of the country essentially. And he said it was a perfect Wild at Heart congratulates that sophisticated insensitivity by overdoing delirium and using excess of violence and sex to entertain decadent taste. It's so yeah, that pretty much sums it up. That like our society would rather be distracted by overdoing violence and sex to distract them from what's really going on in their lives. And yeah, I mean, it just like kind of confirmed all the opinions I had about it, especially when he said America's white trash culture sets the terms through which Lynch sees the world, and just kind of like how they think they're untouchable and how they can just go about everything without consequences and that everything will be okay. And I don't know, just kind of like had a sense of rebellion throughout the whole movie that kind of touched me as insensitive, and I feel like Lynch had his own agenda for the film, and he just kind of got to express that, obviously because he was the director. But yeah, so I agree with all of White's points and opinions on the movie, and yeah, it was an interesting one for sure. Thank you.